Many people ask me about how do I know my charity is making the meaningful impact in the world that I wish to make. And they often talk about overheads and whether that's a good thing or not. So I quickly explain that, but first of all, I'll use business and debt as a metaphor to help me explain to you my feelings on such things as overhead. If I was investing in a small local business, a deli down the road, or a small lawn mowing business, I actually wouldn't be really interested in investing if they were servicing any debt. And that works out pretty well, as a good rule of thumb. But when it comes to larger business, I'm not concerned about the amount of debt, but whether that's good debt. Because there's good and bad debt. And a good company who is at a medium to large size should have good debt. Otherwise, they're not being most effective. For example, bad debt is obviously big corporate executive wages and conferences and misspending, and debt just to service and pay wages and running costs. In other words, the business is not sustainable. Good debt is an example. Let's say I'm producing widgets. I can produce X amount of widgets for a certain price. But if I get a loan and buy a machine that allows me to double the amount of widgets I produce at half the cost, that is good debt, because I'm turning that debt into more income for the business and therefore my investors. Now, similarly, we have the same issue with charities. If I'm going to invest in a local charity, small picture, but significant to me, like cleaning up the local rivers or educating the local children in my area, I again wouldn't be looking at in the same way as with a small business. I'll be saying, look, I'm really looking for an organization that has no overheads. I want them to be volunteers, 100% of my money, just going directly to the cause. And this is actually most charities like that. They're between about 200 and 800,000 a year, and that size you can manage on a volunteer force. But they don't have the ability to scale up to the larger issues, such as climate change, saving species, saving ecosystems. So you would have to choose a larger charity in order to achieve those aims. Some of the small charities might try to do that, but they don't have the expertise or the scale to make meaningful impact. And we refer to these in the charity arena as vanity charities. People like to get involved and connect, but maybe they're not making a meaningful impact in the world which they wish to because of the lack of scale and expertise. So then, if I want to, let's say, save an ecosystem or rainforest or affect climate change, I have to invest in a larger charity that has staff, professional expertise to make the meaningful change. First of all, I would say I wouldn't even bother looking at overhead as my first principle, because what I'm interested is for the money that they get, what meaningful impact do they have on the ground? For example, if I'm wanting to support tigers and tiger populations, I'm not interested whether they have 80% overhead or 20% overhead. I'm interested with the money that they get, how do they convert that into securing and increasing tiger populations? But be careful what measurements that you get back. I'm also not concerned about how many tiger patrols there are, or how many snares are removed, or how many community education programs have been done. These are only means to the end. If they don't know, because they're not measuring, and they can't tell you whether the tiger population in the area is being maintained, reduced, or increased, does that make sense? Then how can they effectively be doing the job? they may be spending a lot of money and they may be doing it very efficiently with low overheads, but they're certainly not, from my point of view, achieving a meaningful impact in the world I want to achieve. Let's say in this case, by securing tiger populations. But back to the idea of overheads. So there's good and bad overheads with these charities. Similarly, like with the businesses, the bad overheads is, big executive salaries, going to conferences and seminars and it just costs of running the machine. And therefore a lot of your money will be chewed up getting to make that meaningful impact. And so charities have to be efficient. But there's actually something called good overhead. Now, good overhead is fundraising, which means, for example, you give your $100 to a target charity. Now that target charity goes to, let's say, fundraisers of us and said, look, give me $100, I'll run a charity event and I'll give you $200 back. That means life overhead. However, they have now used, just as a business uses debt intelligently to increase profit, they use overhead intelligently to increase the funds available to make their meaningful impact in the world for their donors. So I would first say, see what is being measured and whether those measurements in the charity that you wish to support are measuring the real on-the-ground impact that you want to make in the world. If you want a small local outcome, go for a small volunteer-based organization. If you're looking to make the larger global impacts or the landscape impacts of saving whole ecosystems and species, you must go for one of the medium to larger NGOs. But you have to ask, what are they measuring and what can they tell me about the meaningful impact, and look to see if their overheads is actually good overheads rather than bad. I hope this helps. It's an often common question that I get, and look forward to giving you more of these videos if you find them interesting. Thank you.